So my name is Sebastian Wolfram. I am the owner and maltster here at Epiphany Malt. We are a small regional malt supplier here in the Southeast, located in Durham, North Carolina. I got into malting a long time ago. This was in 1997 when I, out of high school, got into brewing in Germany, and part of the extended brewing education was malting. So I got trained in malting and brewing, which was the classical approach to the brewing education back then. Eventually, I ended up over here in the US as a brewer, and it was at the time when there was more and more talk of using local ingredient, and that's how I got into switching from brewing to malting and starting Epiphany as a way to supply the brewers with regional supplies. With my brewing background and starting as a brewer, it was fairly easy to get into that side of the industry to get started. So when I got to North Carolina in 2006, there were 40, not quite, maybe 30 something breweries here in the state, and I mean distilling didn't even really begin yet. So there was very little going on, but it already felt like there was a lot of activity in the background. It felt at the time, you know, like a really cool movement that is going to get somewhere, and it really was pretty inspiring to become a part of. So malt is a raw grain that has been germinated and then dried and packaged again. So what we essentially do is we steep grain so it picks up moisture and starts sprouting as if it's in the ground wanting to grow a plant. And we keep that process going for about a week, and in that entire week the grain goes through a transformation and becomes from a raw barley kernel to a functional malt kernel. During that week-long germination, various enzyme groups are being generated or activated, and the whole inside of the kernel, mainly the starches, are being broken down, the cell walls, and converted into sugars and proteins. And those building blocks are essentially what you harvest during your mash. And without that malting step, the sweet wort which you end up with wouldn't start fermenting. So we're essentially making the base for a fermentable beverage. Raw grain by itself doesn't ferment, it turns into porridge. So sourcing and choosing the grains that we use to make our malts is a pretty involved process. Early on, before even the equipment arrived, I got in touch with various farmers, and as with everything in life, not everybody's the same, and the way the farms are set up, what they focus on, the equipment, the attention to various details in the growing process, and so what we at this point, having learned a lot with them and sort of by ourselves using the grains that are grown here in the region, we mostly gone with seed quality. So a lot of seed farmers are also the farmers that grow to supply the malt house. And because of the key element being a germination process, seed quality, and the ability for the grain to be sprouting is sort of the same, and it matches really well. The other really unique aspect to sourcing grains in the Southeast is that the grains that we get here are off-cycle, meaning they are winter grains. So they go in October, November for their fall planting. They grow all over the winter and come out in the spring. And so it's a unique skill set for the farmers, because you're essentially watching the crops grow over a much longer period of time. The spring and summer grains that are grown in the Midwest and in Canada and a lot in Europe are growing over a much shorter period, often 3 months only, where the winter grains grow over nine, sometimes 10 months. And so it's a very different approach to managing the crop. And for us, what's really important is that we find the right varieties. So choosing the right grain variety is really important, and it falls along a weird line. So the grains that we use, primarily Violetta at the current time, is a very good variety. It's new to here, new to this region, and just came into the market about 5 years ago. But it's an old European variety that the seed breeders have sort of rediscovered in many ways, and it was very adapt to the humidity, the temperature ranges that we have, and sort of the disease pressure, and that's really key, especially around here. Right? It's very humid a lot of the time. The winters are very mild, so there's very little that the weather actually helps to keep fungal growth down, or insects and all that, and so it's a very competitive growing environment here in North Carolina. So we are at Epiphany here. We're a very small malting operation compared to most of the malt is made at much larger facilities that probably make in a couple of days what we do in a year. And so the uniqueness of us being small allows us to use a lot of unusual, non-traditional grains here to malt. So we have obviously barley and wheat, which is sort of the core of what malting is made of. But then we've gotten early on into triticale, which is a unique grain that is from the 1920s, and is a hybrid of rye and wheat, and has sort of the best of both worlds. Some of that spice character, as well as sort of the round, velvety texture of the wheat. And we do various corn varieties. Tuxpanio corn is one of them that is really challenging. We do an Indian red corn from the Chesapeake Bay. We do Carolina gold rice, so a rice that arrived here with a slave ship in the 1600s and was grown on this very coast here for 200-300 years, and is basically replanted and rediscovered, and we are sort of taking it in. And because of the size and our adaptability to single small batches here, we can malt all these different grains with their different challenges, because we are small, and most malting operations don't ever look at these unique grains. And then what you can see behind me here is a piece of roasting equipment, and that adds a whole new layer. So roasting grains essentially is what it means. So we use finished malt or raw grains, either way, depending on where we want to come out with color and flavor. And then you apply heat in this roaster, really intense heat. And so you make further flavors by exposing the grain to heat. So it starts out with sort of gentle, rich grain, toasted, biscuity flavors, and then continues on to a more darker, kind of resin type flavors that taste like raisins a little bit. And then it goes into a drier, more toasted coffee aroma, and then all the way to chocolate, to sort of straight, almost clean burnt. So a roasted barley, which is raw barley roasted, has very little toast character because of it being raw grain. It just develops color, and it's a really nice tool for clean, dark colors in beer primarily. And then this piece of equipment also allows us to do small batches. So we have a whole series that we call Nordic malting, and it has very little to do with Norway or Scandinavia, only in the sense that this concept was developed in that area for very, very small farms or breweries who want to do malting operations, and so the roaster allows us to dry out small grains similar to a kilning process, and so we can do a couple of 100 pounds at a time of these very, very unique grains that we do. It also allows us to smoke malt. So we are one of the few malt houses in the world that can make smoked malt, in a very continuous fashion. And so we take various woods that people want. We've done apple, cherry, peach, to pieces of wood that somebody just had and wanted. So we've done Palo Santo smoke. We've done elder bushes essentially, and so there's various ways that can be done, and it's all done here. Also behind me in that roaster. The roaster is custom made, and so we have a way to infuse the smoke into the drum. We can adjust the moisture so that the grain can absorb very evenly and perfectly these smoke vapors before we dry it back down. So the malts that we make for Broad Branch Distillery are primarily a base malt, and so the base malt is really key for all malt whiskeys, that it has a high enzyme capacity. So that means that it's killed very gently. You preserve a lot of the actual sort of grain flavors. That is important. So we kiln it at about 82 degrees Celsius, which is sort of how we look at this. Is about 178, 180 degrees, and that's for malting still fairly low, but for a distilling product, it is the perfect match between sort of the rich malty flavors, preserving the enzyme activity that we've created during the 6-day germination that we do here, and still sort of make it dry, stable, clean product. And so that's made from the winter two-row barley variety that's called Violetta that we grow with 3 different farmers that are within one's 20 miles away, 22 miles away, Perry Farms, and then Bert over at Whitehead Seed Farm out on the coast. They grow quite a bit. Barley, as it grows over the winter, is a very, very unique reflection of the growing areas here. So it has essentially a southern terroir character, and we add function to it from the malting and sort of the finished flavor. Another malt that we do specifically is an applewood smoked malt that is used to kind of layer in a finesse of flavors into the distillate. And the applewood is from an arborist who's just north of Durham, who goes around in the area and basically cuts down trees and branches, and he collects pieces that are well made for smoking, and he keeps it for folks who smoke meat. But we are in his group of suppliers, and that's where the applewood chunks come from that we use. It takes about for a batch that we do here, so 200-300 pounds of smoke malt. You need 2-3 pounds of wood to kind of create enough smoke density over the course of a 2-hour smoke application that we do here, and then it's dried down and comes out of the roaster behind me, and it goes straight to the distillery. So another new project that we started here at Epiphany has sort of more of a global perspective. We started middle of last year exploring a little bit on tracking all of our resources that we use, right? So we have grain coming in, water, electricity, and natural gas. So the malting process is pretty simple. There's no tricks, no chemicals. There's nothing much that we need to add, both for cleaning or the process, which by itself is sort of pretty cool. It's really just the grain and water and a bunch of brushes, and that's really all we use. It felt very easy to initially get into this, so we started tracking these ingredients and resources that we use, and then layered on top, we explored a little bit our carbon footprint, from using the grain that we grow, all the activities that we have around, from trips to trade shows, to visiting our customers, to hosting a few small events during the year. All that's in there, and then us running our equipment, right? All the electricity, all the natural gas, and it turned out that over 2/3 of the footprint that we are responsible for with the grain that we pull in comes from the farming activity, and then about 1/3 is us actually malting it, and all that together makes sort of a nice package. And it turns out that on paper the math has us essentially create about a pound of CO2 per pound of malt. So it's not quite, it's a little bit less, but it makes it easier to talk about it. And that now led us to this year, where we've come up with a climate resilience plan for Epiphany to basically do various strategies to become 105% climate neutral. So we're trying to offset all of our carbon outputs through various activities that we're going to pursue over the next 3 years to kind of get to basically sequestering all the CO2 that we create through growing the grain and malting it.